Hello and welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Rosie Murphy.
And I'm Sammy Roth, and this is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
We have reached Season 2, Episode 14, one of them, the introduction of Ben Linus, also a little bit more backstory for Sayid.
And as we have been teasing for a while, our interview guest this week, and for the next 2 weeks after this, is in fact Michael Emerson, who plays Ben. He is wonderful and hilarious, and we just love talking to him, and can't wait to share it with you.
Let's get to it.
As always, we start with our hot takes about this week's episode. Rosie, do you have a hot take?
I do. We spent a lot of time last week talking about Sawyer and about his just cruelty toward some of the people in his life that seemed absolutely unnecessary. And I think in this episode, too, we get a little bit of gratuitous cruelty on Sawyer's part. Both just being, he's an ass to Jin when he says, like, Jin, help me find this frog. And Jin is like, nah, man. And then he's an ass to Hurley when he finds him in the woods. But Hurley helps him anyway. And then even when Hurley realizes, like, I don't need to be helping you, you know, people are not going to make fun of me if they find out about this ranch dressing thing. This is a stupid way to blackmail me. Sawyer still kills the damn frog in front of him.
Yeah.
And it's just needlessly cruel, and I'm glad Hurley is not taking his bullshit. And that's all.
I think gratuitous is totally the right word for that. Like, we just did a whole episode about Sawyer being terrible, and now they have to make us watch this? Like, really?
Know.
Come on.
Especially when it starts out as like, oh, this goofy subplot, like it's the Boar Part 2. No, it's not. It's much darker than that. And
it is.
Yeah, I'm a little...
And after he goes and, like, steals the guns and pisses everyone off last week, he's just being all, like, buddy-buddy with Jin and with Hurley and, like, expects them to help him. Like, come on, man.
And then...
Like, you just spent the whole episode proving you're a bad person on purpose.
And then at the very end, he has just crushed this little frog in his hand, and he tells Hurley, if you eat it with ranch dressing, they taste just like chicken. Like, just to be a little bit extra of a dick. And that just made me very angry, Sawyer.
I have an idea. Let's never talk about this again.
What's your hot take?
My hot take is, I mean, this is an intense episode of Lost, the non-Sawyer stuff. Like,
yes, and even like in the flashbacks, not the flashbacks, but in the last time on Lost, you know right away, like, oh, shit's gonna get real during this episode. We got Rousseau, we got Ethan in the oh man,
Tom Friendly.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just wanted to start off with the hot take that in addition to all of those things, this episode is also kind of hilarious. There's just so many, like, good one-liners this episode that I was cracking up at. Like, like, you know, Ben in the Hatch, I know everyone wanted to talk to me at cocktail parties. And Locke just becoming, like, philosopher at the end, coming in with, he is one of them. To Rousseau, we're all others. Like, I was just dying at that point. And, like, Sayid's thing when Jack asks, you know, did you shoot this man? Do I have a bow? I don't know. I was impressed by all of, like, the witty one-liners and banter that was in here. I kept laughing.
I didn't think any of that was funny, necessarily. I just thought it was well written, but okay.
Well, I laughed a bunch of times, and listeners, tell us, did you laugh as well, or were you not amused by these lines? Which side are you on here?
Yeah.
Let us know, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We're curious.
I did not laugh,
Anyway.
but I do have some thoughts about several of those lines.
Please.
We'll start with Sayid. I think we're supposed to come away from this episode feeling like Sayid is a little bit monstrous. You know, he says to Ben in the Hatch very darkly, like, when he's introducing himself as a torturer, he says,
but I did come to learn this. There is a part of me which was always capable.
You know, I said I would never do this again, but I know now that I always had it within me to do this. And after he tortures Sawyer early in season 1, he also says, I will never do that again. And yet here we are. And Sayid no longer seems to feel bad about it. And indeed he says, at the end, when asked, how do you know that he's one of them? He says, because I don't feel any guilt for what I did. And so I think we're supposed to end this episode feeling like Sayid has gone to a bit of a darker place, but he's also right. Like, his instinct is correct. And whether it's coming from a place of cruelty and anger, and, there's clearly some, when he blows up at Ben/Henry about burying his wife, clearly that's about Shannon, and he's grieving, but he's right. And how does he know? How does he know? Because Ben has this whole, what seems to me like an impeccable backstory. And I don't know if he made it up in advance or if he's making it up on the fly. Either way, it's very
he definitely
impressive.
had all that shit memorized. That's my take on that.
Because there's one part where he's giving, the dimensions of the balloon. And I was like, okay. we know. We planned this out.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, what did you feel about... Did you feel like there was tension between those two things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that I was thinking about was comparing how Sayid reacts in this situation to how Jack might react in a similar situation. I mean, Sayid, and I think you really see this when he makes that speech to Charlie at the end. He is so angry, he is so bitter. I mean, he is coming from a dark place in how he approaches this whole situation. But I think in some ways, while anger can make Jack sort of rash and do not smart things sometimes, it seems to have weirdly focused Sayid's determination and his intelligence. I think the fact that I think there's a connection between the fact that he's so deeply unhappy and his ability to hone immediately in on, okay, this guy is lying, I can tell something needs to be done about this, and to go into torture mode. And it's awful, but he's absolutely right that is the correct approach to this situation. That they have no reason to trust this guy. They have every reason to think that he could be lying to them and that they're in danger. And when he says to Locke, when he asks for Locke's help and sort of does the playing Locke off of Jack about, we need to, what needs to be done here, and Jack's not going to be okay with it. I mean, he's right. And you're right. And his instinct is right.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting to see him in that dark, sort of turbulent emotional place, but see how it sort of just seems to me to sharpen his mind and his actions in a way.
Yeah.
Which would make him such a great leader of the group, if only. To go back to our constant refrain on the hatch.
Well, on that note, I mean, as you said, Sayid definitely chooses the correct of the two current leaders to help him in this. He goes straight into the hatch and straight to John and says, here's what I think is going on. And John says, I think you're right. I trust you. And then Jack just kind of stumbles in and says, what the hell's going on here? And it's good that he does, because Ben does indeed have an arrow in his shoulder, which needs to be removed. So it's good that the doctor is present. But yeah, it's interesting to me that Jack, 2 days ago, was stirring up an army, and now is so willing to treat this interloper so kindly. He seems like he should be more suspicious.
It does. And also, he wants to raise up an army to go on the attack, but he also definitely draws the line of torture.
Yeah, that's true.
Not cool with Jack, which is just interesting.
Whereas when Sayid approaches Charlie at the end of this episode, it has echoes of the conversation Jack has with Ana Lucia, where he asks her about raising an army, right? And he says, but again, it is much darker and it's much more personal.
That you were strung up by your neck and left for dead. That Claire was taken and kept for days, during which God only knows what happened to her. That these people, these others, are merciless and can take any one of us whenever they choose.
And Charlie, despite kind of being one of the weakest links in the group right now, and maybe not the first person you would choose,
poor Charlie,
is, he does remember, and he says that.
I think the line you referenced, maybe the key line this episode, where Sayid says, "I think I was always capable of this." I'm really curious about that aspect of Sayid's character, and also really curious about the discussion he has with Kelvin, later to be Desmond's partner in the hatch, about loyalty and what loyalty means to Sayid, and just sort of seeing how he's, he clearly is a loyal soldier and is loyal to his country, but never seems to really have doubt about what the correct course of action is when presented with these choices in front of him, where he has to betray his commanding officer in his country. He is such a it's really interesting to think about just what this says about what type of person Sayid is when you add this all together, because there's a lot of stuff pointing us in different directions.
Yeah, because on one hand, to me, that sounds like a person of great integrity, like somebody who knows what to do and acts on it, fully aware of the consequences, but, still decides to go through with it. Not necessarily the person to whom, they're supposed to be loyal, but the person that they know deserves their loyalty or whatever. But his methods are so difficult to watch, right? I mean, he is a torturer. He comes out of, in the flashback, that's his first interrogation, right? That's the first time he tortures somebody.
Yeah.
And he comes out, sort of with blood on his hands, literally. But what makes him finally decide to do it is that video of a place where he has relatives being attacked with sarin gas, which is a deadly chemical weapon. And all of a sudden there's a greater evil here, right? So I think he's better than most at navigating who the real enemy is.
I think integrity is right. Mm-hmm. That's at its most core, what's happening in him has to do with integrity. And it's interesting to think, he always had this ability in him to torture, and he recognizes that. It's like he knows it's wrong, but he also knows there are situations where it's necessary, and it's sort of a sacrifice that he seems to be willing to make of himself.
Right. This almost reminds me of the conversation we had about Jack and Christian, and there's a line, and it's okay for me to do this thing, but it's not okay for you. I wonder if that's a little bit of Sayid knowing, I've done this before, and although I said I never would do it again, I'm the only person here who knows what I'm getting myself into when I choose to torture this man for information, as well as I'm the only person I trust to do it effectively. Because even when he does lose his temper with Ben, he's able to sort of channel it into getting information. He starts to get really emotional about Shannon and the day he buried her and all that stuff. But then you almost see him course correct in his mind and focus back on find out whether this man is lying.
Can we talk about just the scenes between Sayid and Ben and just what a treat they are to watch?
Oh, absolutely we can.
Oh my God. Just Naveen Andrews and Michael Emerson locked in a room together interrogating each other. Does it get any better than that?
See, it's interesting that you say interrogating each other, because that's not what's supposed to be happening. But is that what you felt like was happening?
Oh, absolutely. That moment where Ben is able to turn the tables and recognize that, did you lose someone too? Oh, so good. I think that's what Ben is doing here. That's another topic of conversation that we asked Michael Emerson about this as well, but I am more convinced every time I watch this set of episodes that Ben got captured on purpose and went in there at personal risk to himself, trusting that he could navigate the situation, wanting to surveil them personally and learn about these people, wanting to sow divisions where he could and figure out what fissures he could exploit in the future.
Oh, I think he absolutely got captured on purpose. And I think again, it might have been a similar to what we're talking about with Sayid, is that I trust myself to do this right, and so I'm going in. We can't send another Ethan. We can't send another Goodwin. Ethan did his job, arguably, but they both got found out.
Actually, by this point, they're both dead.
Yeah. So it's got to be him, and he knows he can do it. And like you said, not just get information, but also fuck with them a little bit, which is always such a treat. Is anything different for you watching this in hindsight than it was the first time through?
I just thought it was interesting this week to watch the scenes with the Gulf War stuff right after George H.W. Bush passed away, which happened just a couple days ago as we were recording this. There were a couple of lines, sort of almost throwaway lines, where the causes of the war are being discussed. When it's Kate's dad, actually, Sam Austin, who's that officer who talks to Sayid in the beginning, where he basically offhandedly, Saddam, your guy Saddam had to invade Kuwait, and I don't want to be here, but now we have to be here because he did that. And then there's a similar line from Kelvin at the end, Sayid, your man Saddam's going to stay in power. We're getting out of here. And meanwhile, like, you see the smoking rubble of the country literally in the background of that shot.
Yeah.
Then I just thought it was interesting in light of conversations this week with H.W. Bush passing away about the causes of the war and what were we doing there, and was this a good war or not, and sort of evaluation of his legacy. And it's just, and I don't really have any deep thoughts on that, but it's just interesting to see Lost kind of like, again, in the light of in the wake of the Iraq War, that the second one that happened right before this, kind of just doing the throwaway, like, boilerplate U.S. focused explanation for what happened here. The decency. I mean, the American officers here, it's interesting. They're very decent. Like, you really understand, like, their goal is to get their pilot back. Like, I think that's designed to be something that's really easy to sympathize with. Of course, you want them to get their pilot back, or his body if he's been killed. But then you also get that interesting shot at the end of Sayid left alone on this lonely road with the smoking rubble of the country in the background. And I don't know, maybe there was more complexity there if you look beneath the surface. I just thought it was interesting how the show treated it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it... I thought the American officers came off as a little brash. Especially Kelvin's little spiel at the end, where he says to Sayid, like, your man Saddam gets to stay in power. We're going home. Like, good luck. Here's bus fare for the way back. No...
Yeah, true.
There was no... Especially since the arc of that plot arc centers on... I mean, Sayid being asked to torture someone. I mean, that is not casual,
It's not.
And I think the way that they treat it with such, like, they're so blasé about it, really amplifies how intense it is, especially for Sayid. Like, how he comes to feel like what you did. What does he say to Kelvin? He says, "What you made me do, no human being should ever have to do to another."
Yeah.
And Kelvin kind of says, like, well, shrug. And that, I thought, made the officers seem callous and, unthinking and willing to put Sayid, who we know very well and who we have come to love, I think, as viewers, we feel like they're treating him like shit. So I don't know if I agree with you there in terms of the show's treatment of this.
Yeah, those are really good points. I guess what I was focused on was just the aspect where it seems like Tariq is very much meant to be the villain here. Having overseen the gas attack that killed people in where Sayid's family lived, and ordering Sayid to kill himself and martyr himself rather than cooperate with the Americans. But no, I mean you make a good point that there's definitely. Maybe there is more complexity than I'm giving it credit for here.
Yeah, I think everybody comes off as a villain. I mean, not to get too meta here, but isn't that the most accurate way to summarize a war?
Yeah.
Or might it not be? Yeah, no, I think everybody really comes off.
To Rousseau, they're all villains.
They're all others.
You really didn't laugh when Locke said that?
No, I didn't. Because I thought he had come out and saying, like, well, it's a confusing scene because initially it sounds like he's coming out in support of Sayid, right? And saying, like, he is one of them. Then he takes it to this weird place, almost like a place that Mr. Echo would take it. I think he says that maybe to kind of needle Jack a little bit, just because he has just had this very high stakes conflict with Jack where Jack forces him to push the button and also to give him the code and kind of holds him hostage.
I was going to say, I'd forgotten that this sort of is the dissolution here of the Jack-Locke partnership in the hatch. I mean, that amazing scene where Jack, prevents him from going to push the button so that he can save Ben. Like, since that was the first episode of this season, or the first arc of the season, Jack finally agrees against his better judgment that he's going to help Locke push the button, and now that's gone. Now it's all on Locke.
Right, he's standing by his original instinct of this is nonsense. But another clever thing that the show does is when the clock actually hits 0 and we see the hieroglyphics for the first time. Yeah. And we get a little sense of, oh no, this is not nothing. We don't know what it is yet, but ooh. But
you don't get enough to really know that it's not nothing. It's like
you get enough to know that it's not nothing, but not what it is in any way, shape, or form. But I just love, like, just where this episode fits into the arc. Like, I was just looking at the list of what we've got for the rest of the season. I felt watching this like, oh, we just kind of been screwing around for a couple episodes here, and like now we're really kicking it. We're bringing all these major mysteries back. We're introducing Henry Gale, who's the season's biggest mystery. Like, there's just such, like, we just really keyed up the tension for this whole episode. And
this episode's amazing, and so let's we could talk about it for probably hours longer. Let's should we do Michael Emerson?
I think we should.
And one thing to note here in this interview is that Michael references his wife Carrie a couple of times. That would be Carrie Preston, also an actor. You've maybe seen her on The Good Wife, The Good Fight, done all sorts of successful TV shows also.
So, Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, so I guess let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved in Lost?
It was a popular show at our apartment in New York City, but I wasn't the one watching it. It was my wife. She watched it religiously, and I used to mock her for it. I'd be doing dishes or some household chore, and I'd walk through the room and go, "Is that jungle show again?" And she'd say, "Shut up! I love it." And then when I somewhere around the winter of it was Christmas week of 2005, I guess, when my agents called and said, "We have an offer for you to do a 3-episode arc on Lost, but it shoots in Hawaii." And the weather was so miserable in New York, I thought, well, that doesn't sound too bad at all. I'll have a little vacation in the tropics. And I guess they had seen my work they had seen me do The Practice and maybe some of my other sinister verbal characterizations on Law and Order and the kind of stuff that I used to do. So Damon and Carlton called me on the phone to say we were having dinner in a Russian restaurant on 54th Street, and I got a phone call from Damon and Carlton, and they told me how excited they were about the part and glad I had said yes, and they would see me or they would not see me because they would be in LA, but they look forward to seeing what I did with this part they had written. So I guess it was in a way it was by way of an on-screen audition. They may have had a big plan for where that character was going to go, but I wasn't aware of it. I just thought it was like all the other guest spots that you ever do, which is you show up, keep your head down, you're a guest, and hope not to screw things up or slow the day down. And but after a while, after we'd shot a couple of episodes, then I got word that they weren't going to let me go home, that actually I had been written into a 4th and then a 5th episode. And everybody's whispering a lot and being very mysterious about it. And at some point, I went to the director and I said, you know what would be really cool was if this character turned out to be the leader of the others.
Oh, no kidding. So that was your idea.
Yeah, and he looked at, it was obviously their idea long before I got it, but he looked at me and blinked a few times, and then he said, "I can't discuss that with you."
Oh, wow. I cannot confirm or deny.
Right.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So there you were. They sent me home. Finally, after I'd done 5 episodes or something, I said, really, I need to go home because I didn't bring things, and I missed my people, and Carrie's wondered what became of me. So I went home, and when I got off the plane at JFK, I'll be damned if there wasn't a voice message from production saying I had to turn around and come back. So I went home and repacked. I can't remember if I got to sleep at home that night or not, but then There I was back there until the end of the second half of season 2.
Wow. So at what point did you find out who Ben Linus was?
Well, I suppose when I read the script, I mean, the thing dawned on me over a period of time. After I had asked that question or made that suggestion or had that idea, then everything we did seemed to be drifting in that direction. So by the time but you know, they kept things really secretive on Lost for good reason. And so I guess it wasn't confirmed to me until I read the script where it was explicit that I was.
So one thing I found really interesting going back and watching those early episodes where you're Henry Gale is, I mean, watching it the first time, certainly it was this huge mystery. Oh, who is this guy? Is he really who he says? But rewatching it, it really feels like, wow, this is Ben Linus pretending to be Henry Gale. Like this feels so true to the character we come to know. He's a master manipulator and a great liar. Like I'm so curious how you approached playing that guy Henry as an actor, I guess not knowing, who he really was.
Yeah, and it would be different looking at it in hindsight from that perspective that you just described, knowing that he's Ben Linus and that he's play acting. How did he come to be such an actor, or how did he cook the whole bloody thing up? And it, of course, I had none of that in my head when I was shooting it. I was just trying to play the text I had. I was Henry Gale, for all I knew, and I was a balloonist, for all I knew. But then everything, I don't know, there were just so many creepy clues that some other agenda was at play.
Yes,
but
there were.
No one could ever, and I wasn't going to ask questions because, I'm the new guy in the company, and for all I know, you don't even know if you're going to make any friends because you're only going to be there a couple of weeks. So, as I say, you just want to keep your head down and do your work. But that principle that I employed of just playing what was on the page at the time for lack of any other contextualizing information, that turned out to be the way to play the role for the whole series. Because you never knew what was coming up, and you never knew whether the things he was saying were lies or half-lies or truths. So it was best not to, mostly if you're a theater actor like I am, you want to know everything about your character. But I had to let go of that, and it's freeing in a way to just show up on the day and just know that you're going to play the scenes in earnest, and then you'll find out later, whether he was being legitimate or not. But it's fun. It's fun to be the villain and not even know that you're the villain or when you're being the villain. That was all good.
Well, clearly it worked out, whatever you did, because you watch it and you think, yeah, this guy's the villain. Like, yeah. Did you have any working? Did you have a theory? Did you think he was Henry Gale, or did you think he was someone else?
Well, I took him at face value.
Yeah.
For a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
But then he started to behave so. He did some sinister things, and he seemed to be a little more self-possessed, not quite so desperate and innocent. So
yeah, there's this one monologue that he does near the end of an episode. He's standing in the hatch, I think with John Locke, and it's this very sinister thing about, if I were not Henry Gale, I would have sent them into the forest, into a trap, and but of course I am Henry Gale. And he's eating some cereal, and you say, "Do you guys got any milk?" Which is a fun, really fun moment.
It's a good moment, and of course, when I'm saying that, I'm thinking, oh, he is this guy. If he's describing, what if I was one of them? What would I do? I'd set a trap.
Something I'm curious about. You mentioned that you're a theater actor, and a lot of watching Ben's character feels very theatrical. Like, you seem like a nice guy, a friendly guy, but like you said, he just has this veneer of sinisterness about him, and you know that he's being duplicitous, but you don't quite know how. As an actor, are there any specific tricks that you use to sort of maintain that veneer? Like anything you do with your body or with your eyes, or do you have any secrets to what made Ben so the kind of character that would just make your skin crawl?
I don't know that I have any villain secrets, but I do things. Mm-hmm. I guess I can say that I do less. The less you do with your face, with your body, with your voice, the more still you are, particularly when those around you are being emotional or losing it. All of that sets you apart instantly in the audience's mind and in the minds of observant characters looking at you. there's a second agenda,
Mm.
that he's being watchful, but is not involved in their place. And that's the thing. I mean, you just learn that. You learn that from playing Shakespearean villains or whatever. You know, no one in the real world thinks they're a villain. Even the most heinous people think that they're just doing what they need to do, and they can justify it in their mind many ways. So there's no special evil affects to take on. You just keep it mysterious, I think. I think it may be more that he's mysterious than that he's sinister. But maybe mystery is sinister in that context. A desperate, lost on a desert island kind of life or death scenario with Michael Giacchino's jittery music always playing in the background. That just makes you think something's bad is going to happen.
And usually it is on Lost. The point about everyone has their justification is interesting, and that's something that comes up with Ben several times, where he's insistent, we're the good guys, I'm a good guy. How does Ben justify that to himself, or how, what are you thinking as an actor about how is this character justifying to himself that he's really okay? Because he does a lot of really heinous stuff.
Yeah. I mean, every time Ben starts justifying something, it's in a particular context within a particular storyline, and sometimes his justifications seem acceptable. Other times you scratch your head. I mean, I'm not sure why he had to kill off the Dharma Initiative and his own father. That's deep and dark. I struggled with. I mean, if I struggled with anything in the course of the shooting of that series, it was like, I think I went to Jack Bender and I said, "Really? And you're going to have me gas? Everybody? Who am I then?" But that was one of those cases where I didn't need to be asking those questions. I just needed to be playing the scenes. Because it was out of my hands in a way. And my sense of confusion or ambivalence probably showed on my face as Benjamin's confusion, ambivalence, guilt, regret, all of that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because your character so much, and in watching season 2 where you're Henry Gale and then, some of season 3, like you're so much in control, right? I mean, Ben is like always seems like he knows exactly what he's doing. He's manipulating everyone else. He's kind of doing it effortlessly. And then you get later into the show and you get some of these bits where he's, more broken or more vulnerable. Like, what was that like for you to sort of, play this character as he transformed, where you got to see all of these places with him where he wasn't this, master who was in control of the situation?
Well, that seemed to me like a natural evolution. If you're going to hold an audience's interest over the course of many seasons, some things have to develop or change as you go along, and that seemed only natural to me, that once you've scared your audience with a character, then why not start chipping away at that edifice of evil and start to show some softer spots, start to begin to justify or humanize all of that. And that wasn't an idea of mine, although I completely agreed with it as it developed. It just seemed to be a thing that the writers wanted to do. I was totally on board with that, and we seem to have a kind of a non-verbal circuit between me playing this character on an island in the Hawaiians and them writing it in Los Angeles. And we never talked on the phone or anything like that. They would send out an episode and I would play it a certain way, and they go, I see. We could also do something else. We could go in a direction And so they would show me little directions, and I would show them little directions. And between the two of us, we sort of collaborated without ever talking.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite lines or any favorite scenes that you acted or delivered that stick with you even today?
We love Ben's one-liners, and I think the fans probably do too.
Well, there's a bunch of good ones. There's, you guys got any milk? There's how many times do I have to tell you, John, I always have a plan. There's, if you're talking about space traveling bunnies, then yes. Just stuff like that. I mean, because what eventually,
Classic.
After the audience got really afraid of him, then it was all right if he was also funny.
Well, that's interesting because watching the early Henry Gale episodes, I was surprised by how funny he was. I mean, you were wisecracking down when you were locked up in the armory and had the patch on your shoulder. I mean,
yeah, yes, that's right. That's right.
It was fun. Yeah. And another thing that just reminds me of, you get beat up a lot on this show. People are just like, so many people hate you and they're just knocking you senseless all the time.
Yeah.
Did that get old to just keep getting beaten up? Or I don't even know how those scenes get filmed, but
well, it was always a little worrisome to me because, people aren't always as careful as you might wish them to be.
No
and
kidding.
Some people are bigger and stronger than you are and don't know their own strength. So yeah, there was of course a huge amount of TV violence, but also some real life injury that went along with it, like, we got a little off on the distance on that slap, or, something like that. And I mean, there's a famous scene, it's in an episode in season 6, where Desmond hits me, and we're in a parking lot of a school, and Desmond clocks me, and
yeah, that's in the flash sideways.
Yeah, I go face down on the hood of the car, and he really connected. He put me right down there. I was dizzy with it, and I was hoping that my eyeballs were still in my skull. But there was so much violence. I think I was the most beaten character in television history. Maybe I have a reel of just all the times I take a blow to the face. And it goes like a minute and a half. It's ridiculous.
Man, I think we got to get the Guinness people in to see if that's a real record. Maybe they can
It could be.
verify this. I hope they didn't actually stick an arrow through your shoulder in your first scene in the show. I hope that was faked.
It was fake, but it was cleverly designed, and it looked real. And what's goofy is when you're on the set, and you break for lunch, and you go to the the catering line and stuff, and sit down and chat with people. You forget that you have some like horrific personality attached to you. So I'm walking around, socializing and stuff, and I have a bleeding arrow stuck through me. But you can't take it off; it's too much trouble. So you just wear it all day until they take it off and you go home.
That's amazing. Oh man!
But the same is true. If your face is all bloodied, or you forget, because it's just you inside, you forget that you may look really unappetizing to some of your coworkers. So that happened a lot.
So we'll have more from Michael Emerson over the next 2 weeks. But I just, listening to this again, it's amazing to think how much he changed the course of this show just by how good his acting was.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine the show without Ben, and to think that he just went in there for a 3-episode arc.
Just because he wanted a break in Hawaii for a few months.
I know, and after having made fun of his wife for being so into the show, but no, and then he just 3 weeks he impressed them so much they wrote him a 4th, they wrote him a 5th, they demanded he come back, and then lo and behold, he's the leader of the others and one of the biggest joys to watch, and changes the whole course of everything for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Really remarkable.
Yeah, and I like the way he described working with the writers, even though they didn't really have a one-to-one relationship. Like, the writers would write him a scene, he'd perform it, and then the writers would be informed by that and say, oh, okay, you come off this way. Let's lean into that a little more. Let's lean away from that. And that's really a dialogue without actually being a dialogue. That's interesting to me.
I also liked that he questioned the whole gassing of the Dharma Initiative thing. Just because that was something that I have also always been relatively uncomfortable with and confused by why exactly it came to that in that way. And so I think it's, interesting that he as an actor also pulled that out as, this is the time where I really wondered what they were doing with Ben and why this was happening.
Right.
I really appreciated like what sounds like his sense of, so like he sounds like he was so in tune with this character that he helped create, and really was able to hone in on what was going on in this guy's head, and to be able to point out when I'm not sure I get this. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll have more from Michael over the next 2 weeks, as we said. In the meantime, please subscribe to The Hatch if you don't already on your podcast app of choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, all of the different places you can find podcasts.
Yeah, also come and talk to us. We are on Twitter at The Hatch Podcast and on Facebook.com/The Hatch Podcast. A ton of good conversations there this week about Sawyer and how much we hate him but also love him, and just what a complex character he is. So it was a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you for coming out.
Also, in addition to the subscribing on the podcast apps, ratings and reviews are nice. We love to hear all of the good things that you have to say about The Hatch, and also when you do that, it helps other people find the show.
Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen, and our cover art is by Danny Roth.
We'll see you next week.
Namaste.